Shall we start with the pledge?
Sure, let me pull the flag up onto the screen.
Sure.
Sorry, I'm a little rusty here.
No worries. And I believe, just so that everyone knows, we do have a hard stop at 7 o'clock. Is that right, Eric?
Yeah, we probably should.
Okay.
Okay. The whole interface looks a little different here. Forgive me.
No worries.
I think I should be able to share my screen. But I don't see.
See the green bar below with
There. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I think I'd be good at this by now.
That
Okay.
was a flag too.
We have a flag. Wonderful.
Oh, we do have a flag. There we
Excellent,
go.
Douglas.
Okay. I pledge allegiance
The
to the
flag
flag
of the United States of America,
of America,
And
to the
to the
the
republic
republic for
for
which
which
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And Madam Chair, whenever you would like, I can let you know who we have from the committee present, rather than go through a roll call. That might be a little more.
Perfect. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Thank you so much, Eric.
Okay, so we have Chair Mariah Looney, Vice Chair Russ Ryan. We have Mark Pruner. We have Morris Lum, Edward Hard, Aaron Chappell, Douglas Shaw, and then I see that Donnie Ratcliffe, one of our ex officio members from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, has joined us. And are there any other ex officio or Delta Protection Advisory Committee members that I missed?
I don't believe so.
Okay, so we have 7 of our 12 members present. We do have a few vacancies currently, but I'll cover that in a little bit. We expect those to be filled later this month when our commission meets.
Perfect. So I'll just open it up for public comment if there is any. I don't believe we'll have any tonight, but
Hi, Mariah, Mark Pruner
Yeah.
here. Hey, I just want to apologize in advance. I need to head out at about 6 o'clock to a fire district event with some legislative members.
no
so I have to
worries.
bug out, and this will be I think, unless I was surprised, this will be my last meeting after 8 years. So I think this is wonderful. You guys are great. Go get them. Thank you, Eric, for everything you've done. So.
Well, and this would be a good moment to pause and to specifically recognize Mark Pruner for his long service on the Delta Protection Advisory Committee for nearly all of that time as chair. And you're right, Mark, I do expect that the commission will make appointments on Thursday, and you've elected to not re-up. So we owe you a big thank you for the work you've done on this committee. And I don't think that is the case for anyone else, that everyone else is currently serving a term. There are, well, I'm pretty sure Russ Ryan's going to get reappointed since he's our only nominee for Delta Water Exporter.
I
But,
hope so too.
Yeah, me as well. But anyway, Russ has his hand raised.
Yeah, go ahead, Russ.
Mark, I really want to thank you for your leadership. You're one of the reasons why I joined this body. I've learned a lot from you in the past, and we've had our paths crossed several times. So, and I'm looking forward to our paths crossing in the future. So, Mark, I really appreciate you and the work that you've provided to this committee and the commission in general.
Thank you, Russ. Yeah, I'm not going anywhere, so we'll connect again, I'm sure.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mark, I just want to echo Russ's comments and Eric's comments. Thank you so much for setting me up for success. And I appreciate everything that you have done with DPAC. And I hope that I continue the legacy. I do you justice. So
Thank
thank
you.
you
Yeah,
so much for everything. And again, I'm sure that our paths will cross because of Delta work. So
they will.
thank you
Yes.
so much. And thank you for letting us know that you're leaving early. We really appreciate your work in the community and your work for DPAC. So thank you so much.
Right. Thank you all. Yes. All right. Now on to the business. Thank you.
Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say in public comment before we move forward? Okay, great. Awesome. So we'll go ahead and move to agenda item 3, receiving an update and providing input on the Caltrans Clean California grant for Delta sign installation. And that will be with Kirsten Pringle. Kirsten Pringle from DPC. Thanks so much for joining us. And I'm actually looking forward to this a lot. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Actually, Madam Chair, before turning it over to Kirsten, let me just provide a little bit more of an introduction for her.
Sure.
Kirsten Pringle joined our staff as a senior environmental planner just about 2 or 3 months ago, and time flies because we're having fun. And she came on board with a series of responsibilities. This was not one of the intended responsibilities, but she willingly took on this effort that you'll hear about more in a moment. And she's already just gone blazing with great guns on it and has positioned us very well. Kirsten actually, I know, has attended a Delta Protection Advisory Committee meeting in the past because prior to joining us at the commission, she worked with the Stantec firm and with Lisa Butler there, and I think was in the room when the advisory committee met to discuss the Delta Plan 5-year review. And anyway, she's got a great background, and she's been a fantastic recent addition to our staff, and I couldn't be more thrilled to introduce her to you. So it's all yours, Kirsten.
Thanks, Eric. That was a really, really nice introduction. Yeah, it's really nice to meet you all. My name's Kirsten Pringle, and as Eric said, I started in early February. It does not seem like it's been that long with the Delta Protection Commission. And as Eric also mentioned, prior to this, I worked in the private sector for a while in water resources planning. So the Delta, as its importance to California, is not new to me, but I've been really enjoying learning about the Delta as a place and its rich kind of cultural background in different communities. It's been a great learning opportunity for me. And today I'm really excited to present on the Clean California project to install wayfinding and interpretive signs in the Delta. Some of you may have heard a little bit about this project already. I presented to the commission in March. My presentation is going to be actually a little updated from that presentation. So even if you heard it before, today I'm going to have some new details and updates for you. And then the other part of my presentation is to get your feedback today. So starting this month and next month, I'll be going out to a lot of community groups. I just talked to Doug today about presenting to the Locke Foundation and talking about this project and getting community input. And so this is kind of the first of many presentations I'll be giving. And I also ask, as we're going through, if you think of a community groups that you think would be interested in this, I'd be happy to give a presentation to them, or even individuals you think might be interested in the project. I'd be happy to talk to them, and eventually we'll have some community workshops on this. So I have some slides to share. Let's see, there we go. Right, just want to make sure it's all working. All right. So as we go through, one of the things I'm going to be focusing on today that I didn't go into as much detail at the commission meeting is talking about the designs for the project and also the project locations. And that's one of the things at the end of my presentation slides, I have some discussion questions for you that I'll be asking your input on. So if you see me look over, I'm not trying to be rude, I'm trying to capture all your notes so we can put that into consideration for this project. So as I'm going through, especially design and location slides, I try to kind of think about ahead where these signs might be located, what would be the best place for them, and also what do we want on these signs. But a little bit of background, the need for this project was originally identified in the Delta Tourism Awareness 5-year marketing plan. So during development of that plan, they heard a lot from community members like yourselves and stakeholders that there needs to be increased wayfinding and other types of signs in the Delta. Following that, the Delta Sign Plan was created in 2018, and that was developed by the Sacramento San Joaquin Delta Conservancy in coordination with the commission and with funding from the Delta Stewardship Council. And that plan is kind of like a guidance document. It provides some nice guidance developed based on input from community members on what the signs in the Delta should look like. So having consistent design and fill. But it also importantly gave us a lot of good information about the types of signs that people wanted and where those signs should be located. And some of you may be aware of a parallel effort that's being pushed forward by my colleague, Virginia Gardner, to install signs with the Conservancy that say, "Welcome to the National Heritage Area." So this is a separate project, but it will complement those other signs that are already going in.
Hey, Kirsten,
Yes.
as you get deeper into this, can you make the image larger on your screen by switching to slideshow?
Yeah, I can try. Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just wasn't sure which view it would show.
That's perfect. Thanks.
So before I started, we, the commission, applied for a grant with Caltrans District 3 for the Clean California Initiative. And for those of you that may not be familiar, this is a new grant and also funding program. It's funded by general funds of the California, and it's to provide funding for beautification and community improvement projects. So we're successful in getting a $430,000 grant through Clean California in partnership with Caltrans District 10 to install up to 30 wayfinding and 15 interpretive signs in the Delta. And because it is funded from Clean California in partnership with Caltrans District 10, there are some important specifications that I'll go into detail later, but are important to keep in mind about the project. The first is that the signs must be located primarily in Caltrans Districts 3 and 10, which includes Sacramento, San Joaquin, and Yolo counties. So I know there's a lot of interest in improving signage in Contra Costa County as well. And that's not something that's totally out of bounds, but we also have a very aggressive schedule for this project. All the signs have to be installed by June of next year. And so to get it as streamlined as possible, we're primarily going to be locating the signs within Caltrans Districts 3 and 10, because those are the agencies that we're partnering with. The other thing to keep in mind is that the signs must be installed along state routes and, if possible, county roads. So I've heard a lot of feedback of people saying you should put signs on I-5, which are wonderful, but that's not within the scope of this project. So in talking internally, reviewing the feedback from the Delta Sign Plan, and also having some preliminary talks with Caltrans District 10 staff, we decided to focus the signs in a certain area to kind of get the biggest bang for a buck. So right now, the main locations for the signs proposed are along State Route 160, from the community of Freeport down until where the 160 and the 12 meet by Rio Vista. And then also on the 12, between Rio Vista, that intersection there, and then also the 5 freeway. Now, I was told by Caltrans that most of the off-ramps off the 5 are Caltrans owned. So even though we're not planning on putting signs right on the I-5, we do have the possibility to put them on some of those off-ramps to kind of draw people into the Delta. I've also been talking to the counties, so Yolo County, San Joaquin, and Sacramento County. They've all been really great about potentially putting signs within their right of way, and that would require encroachment permit, but also maintenance agreement with those counties, which I'll talk about a little later. So this is our updated schedule. When I presented to the commission, we had the schedule of all the signs being installed in December of this year, which is even more aggressive. And talking to them, we got an extension to have all the signs installed by June of next year, which is the hard deadline in accordance with the way the grant funds work. So that is the deadline we're working towards. We're going to be starting, like I said, this is kind of almost like our kickoff for the community outreach. So I have a bunch of presentations I'm either scheduling or have scheduled throughout May and June. And likely in June, we'll also be doing some community workshops to get some broader input. Once we get that input, we'll finalize the locations and also design the signs. We need to do maintenance agreements, and that's an important thing we'll talk about later when it comes to locations. So we can't just install the signs and leave them and never touch them again. There has to be some agreement in case the signs are, say, destroyed, someone hits them, or if there's graffiti or say a lot of trash around them, someone has to go out and either replace the signs or fix them somehow. So we need to get agreements in place with Caltrans, or if it's in the county right away, county staff, to be able to maintain those signs until the end of their existence. Then we also have some permitting, encroachment, and other permits we'll have to do, and then get the signs printed and installed. So now I'm going to give a little more detail on some considerations about the designs and some of the constraints that we're working on to kind of help inform your guys's and community feedback. So first, what is a wayfinding sign? These are some examples of wayfinding signs, and these signs use a combination of symbols, words, arrows, and the mileage markers to point people to a specific location. So this location could be a community. So we could say 3 miles to community of Locke, 5 miles to community of Cortland. But it could also be features in the Delta. So this could be agro-tourism features like wineries or beds and breakfasts on farms. It could be business districts. It could be recreation. So hiking trails, public boat launches, things like that. It could also be historic points of interest or cultural points of interest. So this is one of the main things that we're going to need the community's input in. As I'll talk about in a minute, we don't have a lot of flexibility in exactly what the signs will look like as far as their design itself, but we have a lot of flexibility and options as far as what do we put on these signs. And that's where we're going to be asking feedback is what do people want these signs to point to? And you kind of see two different designs on this side. So we're going to be going with the one that meets the Caltrans standards. And that's those two darker blue ones that you see on kind of the far left. So it's going to be 1 or more signs up to 3, usually on probably some sort of metal post. And we also, I recently learned, have the ability to place them on existing signs as well. So we obviously want to reduce or minimize sign clutter, but there is a possibility to add them to existing signs if there's enough space between the bottom of the sign and the road. So it's just something else to keep in mind. So some considerations, like I said before, we have to meet Caltrans standards, and talking to county staff, most of the counties, or I say all the counties, also follow the Caltrans standards with maybe their own specifications mixed in. So we have to meet their design specifications. So we don't have a lot of different options as far as like the colors or the way it looks and feels for a lot of reasons, including health and safety out there on the road. But we do have a lot of flexibility on what we show on those signs. And we also have the potential to use some icons that are maybe not the standard icons, but are a little more specific to the Delta. And the last consideration to keep in mind is that we cannot name private businesses, but we can point generally to a private business. So you could not say the name of a specific winery, say 3 miles this way, but you could say winery in 3 miles or wineries in 3 miles. So we can kind of direct people to private places. We just can't put their name of the business on the sign. And this, I won't talk a lot about the interpretive signs today. Most of my presentation is on the wayfinding signs, but I want to touch on the interpretive signs briefly. So you're probably familiar with an interpretive sign. You probably see them at parks, national or local parks, or maybe in front of a museum. Interpretive signs are different in that they tell a story of the place. So they use a mix of words and often image to tell a nice story. And this is where we do have a lot more flexibility in the design. So this interpretive sign you see your example is actually straight out of the Delta sign plan. And we do hope to follow these designs for the interpretive signs we put in the Delta. Something that's really nice about these signs, they point to the Visit CA Delta website, but you'll also see on the far left in that kind of beige box that they have an actual map of the Delta and with a little dot of where you are. So for people that are getting out of their car or just walking by, it kind of conceptualizes or gives them a sense of place as far as where they are in the greater Delta. And this is another topic that we'll be asking for your input and also a lot of community input on is what types of topics should we focus these interpretive signs on? So that was a little bit about the designs. I'm going to talk a little more about the locations now. So a little more specifications on the locations. Like I said before, they're going to be located in Sacramento, San Joaquin, and Yolo counties. They must be in the Caltrans right-of-way or along county roads. They're focused on State Route 160 and State Route 12. Now, going back to the topic of county roads and talking to county staff, the challenge in putting in the county roads is not the permitting. There will be extra work in getting encroachment permits from the county. It's going to be the maintenance. And so different counties have different abilities of how much maintenance they can do, especially depending how far these signs are going to be away from where they're already doing maintenance. And so we're trying to work that out with the counties, but we do think that would be really nice to complement, especially as you all probably know, the 160 in the Delta crisscrosses the Sacramento River over and over again. And in between all the places where the 160 crisscrosses, those are all county roads in between. So if we didn't have access to some signs along county roads, it kind of be a patchwork depending on which side the 160 is. So we're trying to fill in those patches with some agreements with the county. And then, like I said earlier, maybe have some signs along some of the main roads that go off the 5 to draw people into Delta. So maybe Hood Franklin, Twin Cities, and then also Walnut Grove Road. So people coming in kind of know which communities they're heading towards. Some other specifications or consideration to think of, I said before that we have the potential to add to existing signs, which would streamline, but also we can put in new signs. So in order to add to existing signs, it would have to be only certain types of signs. So kind of like the green signs that you're used to seeing that are these directional signs, or maybe some of the blue kind of tourist oriented signs. We cannot add them to say stop signs or yellow hazard signs because those create safety issues. It has to be a minimum amount of space between the bottom of the sign and the road. So that's another consideration of adding to existing signs. We also, especially when adding to existing signage or areas that have a lot of signs, we want to avoid sign clutter. This is another thing I've heard from a lot of people and just the outreach I've already done. So this is an example of sign clutter, not necessarily in the Delta, but there are some places in the Delta that look like this. There are places that already have a lot of signs and we don't want to add to those places. These signs should complement or fill in gaps where there's not existing signage already. So that's something to think of. There's a lot of requirements around safety of where we put the signs and then also environmental permitting. So we just also want to keep in mind, for example, is there enough room on the edge of the road, especially on a lot of those levee roads that you've been up there, you've seen that there's not a lot of road on this room on the side of the road, probably to put a lot of additional signage because of safety concerns, or if you're going around a large curve. So there's going to be some Caltrans specifications that we also have to follow. And once we give them a draft list of locations, they will have an engineer and also their environmental staff go out and actually look at these locations to make sure that they're safe and we're following all the rules. For the interpretive signs, we're not as far as identifying potential locations. but they'll be in the same location, Sacramento, San Joaquin, or Yolo counties. But here again, we have more flexibility of where we can place them. So preferably the signs are going to be on public property, though it doesn't necessarily have to be on State Route 160. There is the potential to put it on private property with public access. So example of this may be like a privately owned museum space or a public space maybe owned by a nonprofit that's not necessarily public, but already has access from the public. And obviously we need an agreement with that landowner. Their interpretive signs also need to be in locations that have high pedestrian and bicycle access already. So obviously we want people to walk down and see them and learn something about the location they are in. We could potentially put it in some places that have existing car access, but you need to have a lot more space to do that. And obviously people need to be able to safely exit and enter their cars after they're seeing the signs. So just a quick summary, we're installing up to 30 wayfinding signs, primarily around State Route 160 and 12, with the potential for some additional locations on county roads. And up to 15 interpretive signs locations we're still figuring out, but we're looking for ideas. We're looking primarily for input on the sign features, so not the designs, but what do we show on the signs? What are those signs going to point to? And then also on the locations, even though we have some locations already identified, what I really like to hear from you and others is where are there gaps existing? Where is it most confusing to drive around in the Delta where we need existing signage? And where do we want to point people to relative to where the signs are located? And all the signs must be installed by June 2023. So where we are in next steps, like I said, I went to the commission in March, and the purpose of that meeting was to get authority for Eric to execute in a cooperative agreement with Caltrans. So the cooperative agreement is the required document we need with Caltrans in order to receive the grant funding. And we're still negotiating that out with them, but I am trying to set us up so when it's done, we can hit the ground running. So I said I've been scheduling some meetings. I think I have 4 presentations scheduled. I reached out to a lot of other organizations to start talking to people about this project and get input. And we plan on holding the first set of community workshops likely in June. And then we've also been working on identifying some preliminary locations and talking to county staff, and we'll continue to refine those locations as we get more feedback from the public, with the goal to kind of have the locations and features wrapped up at the end of June, early July, so we can start working on the designs. So I have some general discussion questions, kind of high level for you, but before we go into that, I'm going to take a pause and answer any questions about the project itself before I start getting input. So does anyone have questions just about the project? I can go back to any of the slides already covered.
I have a question. Well, I think most of the bridges in the Delta don't carry a sign, which is pretty ridiculous. Yeah. So does your program cover possible signs for the bridges?
I'm going to ask you a quick clarifying question. So a sign for the bridge, do you mean a sign kind of saying which bridge it is, or
Yes.
which direction to go
Which
after you
bridge
get
it
off the
is.
bridge?
Which bridge it is? Because I mean, I live here. I know Paintersville Bridge. There's no way you can find out there's Painters Bridge when you're driving.
Yeah. So that's a possibility of something we could do. Those might look a little different, though we could still install them. They'll probably be place marking signs, which are usually like kind of these long skinny poles, is my understanding. I would have to look at the California MUTC guide. So as far as the sign, my understanding, and I'm still learning about all of this too, is that the bridges are a mix of Caltrans bridges and county bridges, depending on whether the 160 crosses it or not. So for example, the Freeport Bridge is a county bridge because the 160 does not cross it, it just goes past it. But if the 160 goes across it, then it's a Caltrans bridge. So to put any signs on the non-Caltrans bridges, we would need to get an agreement and talk to county staff. So definitely a possibility. And we did a site visit maybe a month or two ago with Caltrans staff, and we looked at a lot of the bridges as potential locations. So we are looking at those.
Yeah, I think that's badly needed. Thank you.
So I see there are hands up, so I'll go with in order of what they are on my screen. Mark Pruner, Russ Ryan, and then Edward had his hand up. Not sure if he still wants to go, but if he does, he can go after Russ.
Thank you, Mariah. I just want to follow up what Douglas said, that I think what I heard primarily in the presentation was generally about road signs and pointing people in the right direction to, different places. I would just like to encourage the kind of a twofer idea, and that's to refer to local places by their local names. So Douglas brought up the Paintersville Bridge, for example. So it's common for the bridge going over the river at Cortland to be called the Paintersville Bridge. Well, why is it when it's really the Cortland Bridge? Some people refer to it as the Cortland Bridge, but that's because there used to be a little community on the Sacramento side of the river called Paintersville, and you can see remnants of that's there. But it's kind of a great reminder to use local nomenclature, locally used language to identify, those assets. Corollary to that, I think, is that the legacy communities, which are specifically called out in the enabling statute, don't have a consistent signage. So when you're entering, let's say Freeport, just have the sign Freeport established, whatever date it was established, Hood established, whatever. I think that would be not just informational, but I think it would be inspirational. And if you could accomplish both major goals with succinct, clear, a set of vocabulary consistently displayed, I think achieving those intermingled goals would be tremendous. That's my comment and my examples.
Thanks. I really like that idea. I would have to go back and look. I know some of the communities have signs. I know what the Hood one looks like. I would have to go back and look about what the others look like. It could be the time they were put in or who put it in. The counties have different standards. But I really like that idea. And also something to keep in mind that we're considering when we're doing the field visit is potentially to put interpretive signs at ends of one or more of the bridge. We did scope out some potential locations. For example, the end of the Walnut Grove Bridge has a small parking area where we could potentially put a sign there safely. And it looks like people are already walking by there. So that'd be a great way to tell the story of, like, I love the story about the Paintersville Bridge, right? That's a good story to tell and ties into the history of the Delta.
Yes, I'd be Hood. For example, who knows that Hood was named after the chief engineer for the Intercontinental Railroad on the Pacific side? I mean, how many people really know that? And you could capture that, named for so and so, chief engineer for
That's cool.
the railroad. This person was monumentally important in connecting the country through the railroad. And Clarksburg was named after a guy named Clark, and there's just little bits of history that I think can be captured in signs, and people can feel inspired, whether they're visitors or residents, as well as get the basics. Anyway, I'm repeating myself at this point.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian, for your presentation. This is Russ. Some of my comments were benched off of what Mark said about local language and history, a little bit of history. One of the things is my company has an island that's right along the 12. So it might be along the same lines as when it was established. People don't understand that history, and that's a good way to say, you are now on Bolden Island and it was established in 19 or whatever. And that might be a good way. Also, and I can't remember, I'm trying to, I'm not young like you are, so my memory kind of phases out once in a while. But when you go over the bridge, I like the idea of naming the bridge, but also the waterway, like Little Potato Slough or Potato Slough and McCollum River along the 12th. That gives folks orientation of where they're at. So those are kind of my comments. Thank you.
Great. And Russ, I just sent an email to you, but I know you're really busy. I would love to talk to you about the signs on Bolden Island. I know you had mentioned that in the commission meeting, and I actually drove out there. I didn't have a chance to actually stop, but I drove back and forth on the 12th to scope out locations. And I feel like Bolden Island has so many locations that was potential that was a little overwhelming. So I'd love to hear from people that really know and think that, like, yes, you should focus in these key areas.
Yeah. I will respond to your email now. I know it's there, so I'll respond.
I'll send you a new one so you don't have to go back. I know you're busy, but thank you. That's great input.
Kirsten, this is Eddie Hurd with State Parks. Russ and Mark touched on a couple of the items I was thinking about, specifically transportation and kind of the community component within the Delta. And I think Russ's also point about waterway demarcation. But also, I think the signs, just in general, the 4 categories, I guess there should be transportation, right? But communities, making sure that the communities are identified appropriately, farm trails, right? And then I think these waterways, so sometimes that is really, let's just say, for example, I'm trying to use an app on my phone to get through the Delta from one place to the next. And the one place I'm coming from is Sacramento, and the other place I'm going to is in Oakley, but I want to go through the Delta. I tried that the other day, and I'm a geographer by training. And the bridges, I will say, I got lost because I wasn't using any devices. I just wanted to see if I could find my way there. And so I think some assistance would be helpful through this process. Obviously, we don't want to overdo signs because that could become a blight. Oftentimes we're going to sign things to the nth degree, but I think it's very strategic. For example, exiting Twin Cities, you come to the intersection there at 160 along the river, there should be a sign saying the Walnut Grove Bridge or whatever the name of that bridge is. I don't think there is right now. It just says the town of Walnut Grove. That's one example for the bridges. So that's I could go on, but I think I can send some additional comments to you offline. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is one of the locations we have identified. If I'm thinking about it right, the Twin Cities River Road intersection. I agree, that would be a really good one.
Hi, Kristen, this is Morris Lum. And as I'm thinking about, when we're talking about bridges and thinking about the freeways that always have lookout points, it would be marvelous to have, yes, a parking area next to the bridge, description of the bridge, and we can call it like a bridge viewpoint, and they'd all be taking pictures of each bridge because people already do that. It could be a wild thing, and numbering them on top of having the description on it, because we have a lot of bridges in the Delta and they're all different.
Love that. Any other general questions or comments? If not, I can ask some of these like more pointed questions. And we already started talking about some of these. So on the topic of, this kind of touches on what Eddie was talking about. So I've heard from a lot of people that it is hard to navigate in the Delta. I'm from the city of Sacramento, where I live here now. So I can agree, as a frequent visitor to Delta, it can be very hard to navigate. So based on your own experience and what you've heard from others, are there specific areas that you think, yes, wayfinding signs are needed in this area? And they could be both wayfinding signs to help people navigate through the Delta, or they could be wayfinding signs maybe because they're close to or good location to point to some of the Delta's really unique features, particularly along the 160 and the 12.
I'm sorry, Kristen, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, definitely. Are there different locations where you think wayfinding signs are the most needed? So maybe say we could only pick 3 locations for signs. We can pick 30, but where would you tell me to focus in? It could be a specific location. So Eddie brought up a great one. I think he said Twin Cities and River Road intersection. I think that's a great example of a place where it's a major intersection. It connects two kind of major ways. You can go either way. So that would be a really good example. It could also be places where there's just like a big gaps in signage right now that need to be filled in.
Yeah, from a transportation point of view, I recall having a conversation on the DPAC about this before. And there were some concerns about certain apps having certain impacts to certain communities on through traffic issues. And just take, for example, the 160 approach. 160, most people will go down 5 and then cut through, say, at Walnut Grove and go that direction. My only concern with this, I'm thinking long-term, and I apologize for not answering in a kind of a short-term mindset, but there are significant impacts when you place signs that we need to foresee the impacts to. So we're going to now, if we just for a second add signs to say Twin Cities to 160 and all that, there's going to be more impact perhaps, meaning more impact to the roads, which will necessitate the community having to really ensure that Caltrans and the County of Sacramento really invest in those roads, because the damage to those roads, for example, Twin Cities, feels like you're going on a rough ride between Walnut Grove and I-5. But not only that, there's just a safety component to it as well, more trip on vehicle traffic. So I definitely think the state routes should be clearly demarcated. That's all I'll say.
And I'll add to one of the things I think about is promoting. So obviously, National Heritage Area designation is really important to promoting that effort. But even more simply, as folks drive through, there was a sign that says, "You're now in the Delta," or "You've exited Delta," you know, because you have identified 160 and 12, and there we can decide, what does that mean? You've entered the Delta. Is it the primary? Is it secondary? Is it the legal? You know, that kind of conversation too. But it gets people oriented to say, I actually think if you say you have arrived in the Delta, is more promoting the Delta and interest. Okay, what's in the Delta? That's what comes up in my mind. Is as I'm driving through that part of the Delta, I'm thinking, what is, you know, subconsciously I'm thinking, what is in the Delta? That's how you promote. That's just my thinking on that.
Yeah, and I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, there's a parallel effort happening, and that's what that project started out. It's an effort by the Conservancy, but we're supporting it. And I think it started, I don't know the full history. I think it started as Entered to the Delta Signs, is now Welcome to the National Heritage Area. But it doesn't mean we can't install more of the signs in the future, because I totally agree. People don't know when they have left or entered the Delta, and it's a great way to get the Delta known as a place. Other input? Good locations for signs. How about features on signs? So we already heard about a little of this already. So I heard bridges, naming waterways, naming communities, and especially in all of these, making sure we're using the local nomenclature. Russ, I really liked your idea about the signs. That would be great. Or sorry, the Delta Islands, naming those as you go over them. That would be great for the signs on the 12, so people kind of have a sense of what tract or island they're at, because I feel like that's so tied to the Delta. I heard farm trails. What are some other types of features that you think these signs could point on? Because I feel like we have so many that I need help kind of narrowing it down on the things the community is most interested in.
I know at Highway 160 and 12 where it intersects, you've got a farmer's market there.
Yep.
Maybe something that kind of, it doesn't say who it is, but it, like you said in your presentation, but it identifies, you know, in advance, you're approaching a farmer's market. It's, you know, good way to keep people interested in the Delta, spend the money on some of the fresh fruits, for example.
Like that.
I don't have any questions per se, or recommendations as far as what's on the screen, but are there going to be any public meetings about this besides, DPAC? I know that you're speaking with other groups, but I just want to.
There is, yeah. I was
Cool.
actually hoping to do it in May. It's probably going to be June because I'm waiting for the cooperative agreement, but I didn't want to
Sure.
sit on that and waiting for the agreement to be done. So I'm actually
Sure.
hoping my presentations that I'm doing over May and early June kind of generate a general interest. A lot of them are going to be really short, like 10 minutes, and that kind of
Gotcha.
drives further input to the community workshop. And I'll make sure all of you know about it, and hopefully you can help me promote it when that's scheduled.
Awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot right now. I know after this, you're going to be in the shower tomorrow and be like, oh, I should have mentioned that. So I'll make sure you all have my contact information, and there'll be plenty of bites at the apple in the future at that community workshop, and maybe presenting to your organization like I'm presenting to Locke Foundation in
Yeah.
the future to provide more input.
Well, I appreciate this. One of my interns is a Hood, like a native of Hood.
Oh,
And
cool.
so he actually, we were asking our interns to kind of come up with projects that they want to work on. And something like this is something that he was interested in. So I'm excited to hear, pass this on to my interns and see what he has to say, and, give that feedback to you, and see where we go with that. That's awesome. This is awesome. I'm really excited about it.
Great. Yeah, I would love to talk to him. I think you said we have multiple locations at the 160 Hood Franklin. And then if we can get some signs on County Road, I would like at least a couple on Hood Franklin. I have some preliminary ideas, but I would love to run it from someone that lives in the community to see what they think.
Totally. Are there any other questions for Kirsten? I don't think so.
All right. Well, I'll drop my email in the chat so you all have
Okay.
it. Like I said, I welcome feedback anytime. If you have an organization that has public meetings, or even if they're not public, I'm happy to give a presentation about this, but I'll make sure you all are kept in the loop when we do schedule those bigger community workshops. And I'll probably be asking for your help to promote them just so we get really good attendance. So I really thank you. This was really wonderful input. And I appreciate your time today.
Awesome. Kirsten, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we can move on to agenda item 4. And that is to consider input to the commission on the executive director recruitment. Eric, would you like to just give a little background, and then we can dive into discussion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
I hope everyone is aware, but if you're not, many months ago, I let the commission know that I would be leaving my position. I'm not, I don't need to leave by any particular date. I've committed to being a lame duck, hopefully a good one, until a new executive director is on board, but expressed my desire for that to occur sometime in the summertime, this coming summer. So the commission did advertise for the executive director. The application deadline was last Friday. I'm pleased to report that there were applicants, and that there were even some strong applicants. And that was my goal, was to ensure that the commission had at least several strong candidates to consider as they proceeded with their effort. Where the effort goes from here is that this Thursday I will be meeting with a subcommittee of the commission that will be performing the initial screening of the applicants. Coming out of that screening, we'll be selecting finalists for the entire commission to interview. Those interviews will occur before the entire commission at the May 19th meeting. That meeting will be at the Stockton Hilton. It'll be our first live meeting since January of 2020. So that's pretty exciting. And it's further exciting because there will be a closed session at the conclusion of that meeting where the finalist candidates will be invited in for an interview with the full commission. I suspect that the commission will strive to make a determination that evening of their preferred candidate. It might be subject to further checking references and finalizing other details, but my suspicion is that they will want to come to a conclusion. Otherwise, they'll have to call a subsequent meeting before they can, take that action to offer the position to a candidate. At that closed session, which will be staffed by our Deputy Attorney General and Commission Counsel, Carlos Mejia, I will not be in the room with the commission. I'll be entertaining the finalist candidates and tending to their coming and going. But Carlos Mejia will be staffing the commission, and I've already asked the commission staff that if they would like to provide input about the selection without knowing the candidates. So really just talking more generally about the qualities that they would appreciate for an executive director. That, and even if those, comments were critical of my performance, I wanted to be sure that that was, handled confidentially and that they could speak as freely as they would like to speak. So they are in the process of transmitting to Carlos Mejia specific comments. That offer is also available to the Delta Protection Advisory Committee. And I'm happy to step off the meeting now if you would like to, speak freely, and prefer that I not be there for that. But there is the opportunity to do that. The important thing to note is that it would be great to have that input in hand by early next week. Things are going to be moving pretty quickly at this point, and the intention is to forward the applicant materials to the full commission early next week, or at least the earliest part of next week. Maybe it would be on Tuesday, in advance of the commission members receiving the full meeting packet. So they have time to review those before the May 19th closed session where they will conduct the interviews. So I hope I covered what needed to be covered on that. They would absolutely be interested in the input that DPAC would like to provide. And just as I know they will be interested and want to hear the input provided by the commission staff. So unless there are any questions, I think that's what I wanted to mention about the process moving forward. And I don't know if that Mark had a question about this or about a different matter. And I know, sorry, I should have taken you sooner, Mark. I know you've got to move on to your next meeting.
No, I'm sorry. I left my hand up. I totally breached protocol. I forgot to take my hand down.
It's a vestigial hand. Okay.
The vestibule hand. Thank you. Yes.
Aaron?
Yeah, Eric, I was just wondering if you can kind of touch on the primary duties of the executive director. From what you see as kind of the key things that they do. I haven't had a chance to look at the duty statement.
No, thank you for that, Aaron. And you're perhaps reminding me that that probably would have been a good item to send out. Did I send it out, or did I just imagine that I sent it out? I hope I sent it out. I've been doing a lot of things that I've been imagining a lot of things that I haven't done lately. I'm just kind of at that place. So I'm putting my fingers on it. Excuse me, I should have had it handy. So the duty statement identifies three primary blocks of effort, and they're almost equally split. The first is providing support to the commission. So staffing the commission, ensuring that the commission meetings are, materials are available for the commission. Sometimes that means that other members of the staff prepare those materials. Sometimes it means that I prepare those materials. But just supporting the commission and being the primary liaison with the 15 commission members. That also includes the work of the commission's committees, including the Delta Protection Advisory Committee. So staffing and developing all the background information and material for these advisory committee meetings would be part of that responsibility as well. And then finally, representing the commission in a variety of arenas and venues related to the Delta. You know, that's everything from reporting to the sister Delta agencies, the Stewardship Council and the Delta Conservancy, to participating as the representative for the commission in a number of different efforts and venues. So that's the first part, representing the commission or commission support. The second part is program development and implementation, and that's kind of equally weighted with the first. And that's to lead the commission staff in developing and administering the work to ensure compliance with the Delta Protection Act of 1992. That's primarily our land use oversight role through the Land Use and Resource Management Plan and our comments on local government land use projects, but those comments extend to state and even federal agency projects in the Delta. That also means the efforts to update the economic sustainability plan for the Delta that's called out in our statute. Ensuring that we are as ably as we can protecting and enhancing the unique Delta values. And primarily that means ensuring that the Delta plan is administered, that's the Delta Stewardship Council's Delta plan, is administered in a way that recognizes the statutory obligation to protect and enhance Delta agriculture, recreation, cultural and natural resources, even as the state goes about accomplishing its two co-equal goals for the Delta of water supply reliability and Delta ecosystem restoration. So that's an important part of program development and implementation. And then finally, the third leg of the duty statement has to do with organization administration. That's everything from administering the commission's budget to ensure successful program delivery, identifying supplemental funding sources to help us accomplish our programs, our efforts. Plan, lead, organize, and the commission staff and the commission activities. Even though the assistant executive director does the lion's share of the line administration for our staff, the executive director is supervises the assistant executive director, and we have some special consultants that is supervised by the executive director as well. So those are the three primary functions. I hope I described those in a way that makes sense and gives you a better picture of what this all looks like. And then, you know, embedded in all of that is just being visible within the Delta community. Our primary responsibility is to, represent the Delta voice in these larger discussions, primarily at the state level, but at other levels as well, about the Delta, about how water moves through the Delta and about how the Delta ecosystem is restored. Now about the Delta National Heritage Area and how that effort is administered. So that's a part of the job duty as well.
Thanks, that's helpful.
Okay, great. So is there anything that people would like to add? Eric, did you want to step out?
I don't mind doing that. If someone can, I'm going to make, let's see, I'm going to make Mariah the host. And if someone can just notify me when you'd like me to rejoin the meeting, but yes, I will step out now.
Sure.
But let me make you the host first, Mariah.
Perfect. Welcome back.
Great, thank you.
And then just so that you know, Eric, because I do, the only question that I would have, I won't discuss anything that we talked about, but if I am to write up a draft letter and send it to the members of the committee, that I can do that, right? It doesn't violate.
Yeah, no, absolutely you
Okay,
can.
cool.
And I'm going to email you. I'll connect you and Carlos Mejia so you know who to send it to.
Perfect. Awesome.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So.
Okay, great. Perfect. So if we are going to move on then from that, I had the agenda open, but I opened a new document.
No, that's fine. The next item would be a report from me on the commission activities.
Yeah, perfect. Do you want to go ahead and walk us through that, Eric?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you.
First off, I think at least some of you know because you put in applications, but everyone else should know that we did put a call out for advisory committee nominations or applications. We have 6 spots on the committee that are either vacant because we have a Delta business spot that Barbara Daly was representing. We have a Delta agriculture spot that DeWitt Zalecki was representing. And both of those resigned from the advisory committee earlier in the year. Barbara's seat was going to be up for appointment in May. So that one is, we put the call out for a Delta business rep. And then in addition, the seats that Jim Cox and Russ Ryan and Chris Elias represent are up for appointment, and they all submitted applications. And so I'm going to be meeting with our chair and vice chair on Thursday of this week, and that will be an opportunity to go through all of the applications that were received and to make for them to make recommendations to the full commission about who to be appointed to the advisory committee, and that will occur when the commission meets on May 19th. So at the commission's last meeting in March, which was subsequent to when the advisory committee last met, the commission did approve the appointment of Aaron Chappelle as a state agency representative, and also they upgraded the Delta Cultural Preservation seat, which Douglas Shaw had been representing as an ex officio member, and that became a full-fledged voting member of the advisory committee. So I should have announced that at the start to welcome Douglas Shaw as a voting member of the Delta Protection Advisory Committee based on the action the commission took on March 17th. and also to officially welcome Aaron Chappelle as well, new voting members of the Delta Protection Advisory Committee. So upgrading the cultural preservation seat that Douglas represents meant reducing the number of habitat and conservation non-governmental organization seats from 2 to 1. And so that is the revised DPAC charter moving forward. So, and again, Jim Cox, who's not present tonight, he is in that seat. He did submit his application to continue his service on DPAC. So more to come on that. But the commission will consider those appointments at the May 19th meeting. I wouldn't say there's any need for those of you who are up for nomination to attend the meeting. I will share with you the staff report by next Wednesday or Thursday, so that you know what's what the commission chair and vice chair are recommending to the full commission about the appointments. So that will be in the meeting packet, but I will also share it with those of you who had submitted applications. So that's one thing I wanted to update you on. The second thing is to let you all know that we concluded the 6th cohort of our Delta Leadership Program last Friday, no, more than last Friday, a little over a week ago on Friday, April 22nd. And Douglas and Morris are participants in that program. Gary Mello, who's joining us as a guest, was an alum of the program. So we concluded the Delta Leadership Program, a great group of leadership program participants this time around. Oh, our chair, Mariah Looney, how could I forget? She's an alum of the Delta Leadership Program. So congratulations to Douglas and Morris. As usual, we concluded the program with a very nice reception. It's worth noting that the last public event I attended before COVID was the Delta Leadership Program concluding reception. I'm pleased that we didn't have any transmission that occurred as a result of that in March of 2020. And presumably we had no transmissions occurring when we all met under the beautiful trees at Bogle Winery on Friday, April 22nd, 2022. But it was great to see everyone in person, and thank you to those, including Edward and Eddie and Gilbert Cosio, who joined as members of the special guests supporting the 6th cohort. So, and maybe you were there too, Russ. If you were there too, I should have mentioned your name. But thank you all. The third item I wanted to mention is the National Heritage Area Management Plan. The work proceeds on that, and the remainder of the months going into the summer and into the fall are going to see a lot of activity related to that. We do have a separate National Heritage Area Management Plan Advisory Committee. As is the case, we have overlap there. Douglas participates on that. And I think that's it for those faces I see on the screen here. But it is possible, and maybe even by the time the advisory committee meets next, that we'll provide a more detailed update about where that management plan currently sits. But most of the heavy lifting that we've been doing on that has been in concert with the the advisory committee that was formed specifically for that purpose. But I think it would still make sense to check in with DPAC about that. And so maybe I can tentatively put that as a potential agenda item and follow up with Chair Looney about that for the next advisory committee meeting. Clean California is a big effort that you've already been briefed on. I think those were the major items that I wanted to relay. Kirsten, is there something I'm forgetting that you think I'm forgetting that I should be mentioning?
I don't think so.
I mean, for me, I've just been very, very focused on doing some recruiting for the executive director position. I wanted to make sure that the commission had at least a few good, strong candidates to consider. And I'm pleased that I think they do. I hope they will agree. But I think they do have some good, strong candidates to consider. So that's been my laser focus since the last time we met. And then there have been other efforts like the Delta Stewardship Council had a certification of consistency appeal proceeding related to the Lookout Slough Habitat Restoration Project in the North Delta. We did not formally participate in that because the commission was unable to agree on an approach when the commission met on March 17th. But I did participate in a hearing last Friday on a very specific technical matter related to the council staff's interpretation of a linchpin Delta Plan policy, which protects the Delta, what we call Delta Plan Policy DPP2, which basically says projects that occur in the Delta must respect local land use. And that's the short story, but there's a whole lot more to it than that. So that was an effort that started when this committee last met and that carried forward through the commission's March meeting and even up to almost to the present.
Awesome, Eric. Thank you so much for that update.
You're welcome.
I was really bummed to not be able to join the ending reception of the Delta Leadership Program. That's like always my favorite time to meet the new class and everything. I've been having my dad is in his 80s, so I've been making sure that he is good on the weekends when he does not have a caregiver. So I'm really excited that everything went well. Looking forward to next year. But yeah, awesome. Does anybody have any questions for Eric on the things that he's presented?
Good question, Eric. Was that DPP2 a must or a shall in the policy?
It's a shall. It's a policy, so it
Yeah.
has regulatory effect. It's not a recommendation in the Delta Plan, but a policy.
Okay, thank you.
So therefore, it has to be addressed in any certification of consistency, and then of course is subject to an appeal if someone disagrees with the project proponent's interpretation of whether they've met that policy.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. I actually also have a question. Will we be able to, once there is recommendations provided by the chair and the co-chair of the commission, who they are recommending before it's brought to the committee? I think that you said that we will in the packet for the meeting, the commission meeting. I just want to make sure I heard that correctly.
Yeah, we would. My intention is to share that with the people who are in the staff report. But the staff report will be posted probably by next Thursday, May 12th, that might be as late as Friday, May 13th, in advance of the May 19th meeting.
Okay, great.
And I should be able to give at least a little bit of a heads up to those people who are in the staff report prior to it, going up on the board.
Perfect. And then the only other question, did we get applications for every role?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, there is at least one applicant for every one of the positions that we were seeking to fill.
Perfect. Great.
And I think I mean, I don't think it's any secret because I've already indicated that Russ Ryan was the only applicant for his slot. So there definitely will be some reappointments, and then there will be some new members as well, which is always a nice mix. So
yeah, absolutely.
And that makes sense because Mark Pruner was a long time member. Of course, Barbara Daly stepped away earlier in the year, but her tenure had almost equaled Mark's on the advisory committee. So, there were some long-term members that will be replaced by new members because they weren't reapplying. So that's in keeping with the commission's desire to make sure that there's that it opens up for new participation. Doesn't mean that people are limited to only one term, but and the terms, now that we're on 3-year terms, some people will, are coming into that with kind of on an off calculation for where they fall. We're trying to get everything so that every year there's 5 members of the committee that are up for appointment. We're a little off that this year because we had an additional resignation, but I expect that to be the case in the future. So.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any questions for Eric? Douglas?
I want to thank you for upgrading my position to a full voting position. Okay, so I haven't done any paperwork. Do I need to fill in any paperwork?
No.
No. Okay.
No.
Mm-hmm.
It is customary to send the executive director of the commission a very nice gift, however.
Okay, that's no problem.
No, I'm completely joking. That's a bad thing to joke about.
That's no problem.
That is not true.
Okay,
To the list of
I heard you. I just also want to say that I think at the Delta Leadership Program, I mean, there's so much hard facts that we learn, and they're so great. And at the same time, I think in your process, you try to build camaraderie among all the classmates. And I think you guys have done a tremendously successful job in building that camaraderie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Douglas.
Building a sense of community with humor. That's what Eric does well. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, some would call it a smart aleck, but thanks.
No.
We receive it well because we're smart Alex individuals.
Very true.
Wait a minute. I've got to track that case of champagne that I sent by Amazon. You never got that?
Never received it, Morris. You better take it up with Amazon. Oh, wait, they require signatures for wine. That's right. Oops.
Okay, great. Well, if nobody else has any questions for Eric, thank you so much, Eric, for the great update. And I think we're moving forward as a committee in a really exciting way. And with that, does anybody have any member announcements?
May 21st, Spring Festival in Lock.
Awesome.
Saturday, May 21st. So it's the first Spring Festival since 2019. So we will have street performance, lion dance and everything, all the goodies. So, please drop by. Everything is free. Even the parking is free. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Anybody else? Aaron, you unmuted?
Yeah, I just wanted to let folks know that the 2022 proposal solicitation package will be coming out soon to fund multi-benefit projects in the Delta. So that's kind of focused around levee integrity and habitat development. So we've been working with DWR on the criteria for selecting projects for that. So just wanting it on people's radars.
Aaron, would you be able to say a little bit more about what type of projects that's funded in previous rounds? I don't know if you're familiar, how familiar you are with those particular funded projects, but.
So the note that I have is that we're working with DWR and the reclamation districts on the previous round to do riparian habitat on Bethel, Brandon, Andrus, and New Hope track. But that's all. I can get more details if there's interest in it.
Awesome. Thank you. Go ahead, Eric.
No, I was just, I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but since Aaron mentioned Brandon, I hope everyone's aware that if you haven't heard, that Brandon Island State Recreation Area lost their concessionaire. I think as of May 1st, it might have been as of April 1st, but the state recreation area is currently closed, and that's a real blow to the Delta. That's pretty much the premier state park facility in the Delta. I know that State Parks is keen to find another concessionaire, and I know that there are some efforts that are already underway that I don't know if I need to be not even mentioning parties, so I'll just be very discreet and not say anything further, but hopefully that will lead to an agreement for someone to pick up the operation of that facility, especially as we're heading into high season and with the spring and summer. So anyway, if you have any thoughts on potential concessionaires, I think you can find information pretty readily on the state parks website. I know that they put out a call for proposals for concessionaires to operate the park facility.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Eric. We have a lot of interagency work that goes on through that location, and it's so important as a jumping off hub to do all of our environmental work. So we've managed to get our law enforcement to grant access to federal, local, and state family agencies to still utilize that facility. But having drove through there the day before it closed, there was an aura of sadness by the current concessionaire at the time, but just wandering around there, it's a tremendous asset. I know you and I have spent time there to educate our Boating and Waterways Commission a couple of times, or at least once rather, but also the Delta leadership group that is tied to the Water Education Foundation uses that as a springboard location to really highlight all the interconnectivity. So we're hoping that soon that we get a new concessionaire, but I think also I'm going to go on a limb and say, hopefully it can stay opened across the street as well. That's been a big challenge. We've had some legislative folks that spend a lot of effort to get that open, and then it's still not open. I think there's a lot to be discussed about that location for the future. So thanks for bringing that up.
Great, thanks.
Madam Chair, I'd like to make an announcement that in the July DPAC meeting, if it's okay with you, I'd like to make a presentation on the planning grant that we have on Metropolitan's properties, kind of bring everybody up to what we're thinking about from that planning grant, and we'll be in a position to show you what those adaptations look like in terms of what we call a landscape restoration planning effort. So this is an effort that's funded by CDFW, and I'd be very proud to present that to this group as information, because I think it has a lot of ideas and opportunities that is part of the mission of this body, as well as the Delta Protection Commission.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Now, speaking a little bit, if nobody else has anything, we would like to. Eric and I have talked about our July meeting being in person. So, especially considering we'll have some new members, and I think that when I stepped up and wanted to be in this role as chair, I really did want to bring more camaraderie within the committee. And I think that, the pandemic is not over yet, but I think that we are now far enough into it that we understand the safeguards and the precautions that can go into meeting in person. And I think that I think it's time, especially with some new people, to get us all more familiar with each other. With that, there will be it won't be a Zoom kind of presentation, which is what we're used to. So we'll have to talk about maybe some specifics, and depending on where this meeting is held, we can talk more about that as it gets closer. But yeah, I don't know how people are feeling, if we want to do a little bit of sounding off on that.
All I will throw out there, Madam Chair, is that the default in-person meeting location for this committee had been the Walnut Grove Library.
Sure.
And I think by the date of the next meeting, and maybe that's something we're talking about too, since the first Tuesday in July is July 5th, and maybe a time when people are on taking vacation. But I think by that late June, early July period, that meeting room should again be available to book for meetings. It wasn't available for tonight's meeting, or at least it wasn't several weeks ago when we had to make that decision.
Sure. Does anybody have any thoughts about the Walnut Grove location?
I'm for it.
Would it be possible to maybe start just slightly later to allow for, since it's been a while since I've had to drive to a meeting.
Sure.
Yeah, and we're entering the period of longer days. So that was the other feature of the in-person meetings, is that we started them at 5:30. I don't know if that's enough cushion there for people driving for more of a distance, but it's also nice to not be ending those meetings too late.
Sure.
But 5:30, or even perhaps as late as 6. But
I'm okay with a 5:30 or 6. I'm driving from Sacramento, so it's not too much of a hassle for me. But I think that Walnut Grove is pretty central for everybody. It helps, like, everybody can kind of get there relatively quickly. So if we're okay with that, I mean, I'd like to move forward with that meeting. Now, as Eric said, July 5th is a Tuesday.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are probably going to be vacationing. So I know that on the agenda, it says perhaps making June 28th the next meeting, which is the Tuesday before the last Tuesday of June. Does anybody have any thoughts about that? I'm okay with that. I will be out of town on the 5th, so
I think because I'm gonna have scheduling problems too, because I'll be out of state on the 4th, 5th. My parents are elderly, so I've trying to make take advantage of that time.
Yeah, I understand.
28th would be good for me. Of
The
June.
28th would work.
Yeah,
It does. Awesome. Awesome. Cool. Well, I mean, should we get a proper vote? Do we have quorum right now? Some people have left.
Yeah, you're at 6 right now, so you're a little short, but if I mean, it's really your call to select a meeting time and date and location. I can certainly go on and see if I can reserve the meeting room in Walnut Grove.
Perfect. So yeah, I'll go ahead and make that decision then. Tuesday, June 28th at 5:30. In Walnut Grove. If Walnut Grove is not available, Eric, we can talk about another location, but let's all keep our fingers crossed and let's let's be hopeful that it'll be available for us to reserve. It's been too long since I've been there. It's like I was going there way too often and then not for 2.5 years. So I'm excited to return.
likewise.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will, I'll probably wait until our commission acts on May 19th, but then I'll send out a meeting invitation to everyone,
Yeah.
all the members, and then of course we'll follow that up with a agenda closer to the meeting date. I do expect to still be around in late June, so I don't think you're done with me just yet.
Okay, great. Well, awesome. That sounds great. Does anybody have any last words? We're at the end of the agenda, but if anybody has anything else they'd like to mention. I think we are good. I will give you all 12 minutes of your night back.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we can go ahead and adjourn at 6:48.
Have a nice evening.
Have a
Thank
good rest of the week.
Right, thanks.
Thank you all.
I know, great to
Bye-bye.
see you all.